Hey everyone, as you know, I've promised to ruin the pseudo-archeology cult one charlatan at a time, and I have several more targets lined up for execution. But first we have to revisit one of my prior victims, Dan Richards. He's having a tough time adjusting to his newfound irrelevance, so he's been mouthing off a bit. Let's put him in his place, shall we? That's right, fresh off the heels of my Easy Dunkfest kickoff with Jay Dyer, it's time to scrape the bottom of the barrel again. As you'll recall, my great big pseudo-archeology debunk focused on Graham Hancock, but I also crapped on Dan Richards and Jimmy Corsetti, the bebop and rocksteady to Graham's shredder. Dan, by far the most pointless of the three, threw a big tantrum about it, so his follow-up video came first, followed by Jimmy's at the end of last year, making good on my initial promise. As a result of this debunking activity, exposing his next-level incompetence such that he can't even read a Fox News article, Dan has become a complete nobody. You can see on Social Blade that the slight spike in relevance he gained from his Joe Rogan appearance had already faded substantially, and my content was the nail in the coffin. Despite his best college try with these snazzy thumbnails, almost nobody is watching his videos, and his live streams even less so. One might even say that Dan should just quit his channel altogether, and it seems like Dan himself would agree, since he started a brand new channel simply called Dan Richards. What's this one for exactly? Oh, it's a random channel where he talks about whatever he thinks doesn't fit on his main channel. Got it. Only 2 videos so far. The first one is about magic cards. Sounds riveting.
I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering back in the day, and by a lot, I mean 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 hours, depending on what day of the week it was.
Playing with magic cards 10 hours per day, huh? No wonder this guy's so fucking pointless. So what's the second video about? Oh, look at that. How the cult of atheism stifles science and progress. And there's a picture of me on there where it seems like I'm barking orders to my comrades like the evil Marxist dictator that I am. How adorable. It's funny though, this is exactly the kind of dumb shit he posts on his main channel, desperately attacking anyone who exposes his fraudulence, so I wonder why he felt the need to tuck this one away over here. Maybe he was hoping I wouldn't see it? That's what I would have thought, except that he left me this whiny troll comment from his new handle. I didn't even recognize him at first, I just treated him like every other troll. Once I realized who it was, I clicked through and spotted the whiny atheism video. Is Dan just a masochist begging for more humiliation? Well, bend over, slave. His comment is hilarious too. I have a little short where I talk about how these boners couldn't cope with Flint Dibble humiliating Graham on Joe Rogan, so they just fabricated a narrative out of thin air pretending that Flint is a liar. They just started saying it everywhere. Flint is a liar, Flint is a liar. Joe said it, they all say it. They just repeat it endlessly like a mantra. The problem is that he's not, and he didn't lie on Rogan a single time, so none of these buttholes or their brainwashed flock can provide a single instance of Flint lying, no matter how many times you ask them. They just crap their pants and run away. It's really hilarious. So on the short of me explaining what I just told you, Dan whines about how tone-deaf and science illiterate we are because we accuse Graham of WS. What the fuck is WS? Oh right, white supremacy. And he calls me a fellatiatress. That's confusing because the suffix would indicate that I'm supposed to be a woman, which is bad, according to Dan, but heterosexual women do perform fellatio on penises, which he would probably say is good, at least if he's ever received fellatio in his life. So the intended insult of insinuating that I suck on penises is negated by the implication that I'm a woman who he would approve of sucking on penises. So the insults cancel each other out. The stupidity and constant self-contradiction of these asshats knows no bounds. Anyway, this is another story they repeat ad nauseum, that Flint and I and Milo and whoever else accuse Graham of being a white supremacist, which has never happened ever. Flint pointed out in the debate that Graham references white supremacist sources, like Ignatius Donnelly, since he does do that and they are objectively instruments of white supremacy, which is why it's not surprising that white supremacists champion Graham, something I also pointed out in previous videos. Nevertheless, none of us have ever called Graham himself a white supremacist, but this kind of vacuous gaslighting and cry-bully crocodile tears is all these douchebags have, so they play it every time. Pathetic. Anyway, let's check out this video. It ought to be good, since Dan is a science-illiterate moron who has no idea what science even is, and has zero ability to remark on what scientific progress has looked like at any point in human history, including today. So it's hard to imagine what he could possibly have to say. Regarding the stick up his ass about atheism, I don't remember him spewing any explicit creationist talking points, but idiot grifters do tend to pivot towards pandering to brainwashed Christians when they've been backed into a corner. So maybe this is his attempt at pulling a Russell Brand? Are there sexual assault allegations we're not yet aware of? Of course, referring to atheism as a cult is like calling not collecting stamps a club. So if I were you, I would brace yourself for some stupidity of the highest caliber. Let's take a look.
Now, if you're old like me, you probably remember when atheism really wasn't much of a thing. I mean, you heard about it, and some people claimed it as a label, but by and large, atheists weren't common. At least not commonly heard. Maybe they didn't speak up so much back in those days.
Yeah, being an atheist 100 years ago, or however the fuck old you are, was kind of like being gay, or trans, or a woman with her own ideas, or anything but a white, straight, cis, Anglo-Saxon Christian male. They were in charge, so everyone else had to shut the fuck up and deal with it, and hide whatever made them different, lest they risk chemical castration or worse. Rogue trailblazers like Nietzsche aside, Dan wants to pretend that atheism is a brand spanking new woke mind virus, so let's let him do that.
The catalyst for atheism coming out into the world seems to have been twofold. One would have been the whole World Trade Center thing, and the other one was the invention of social media. It kind of seems like, you take MySpace and you add the World Trade Center to it and you get atheism plus.
What the fuck is he talking about? After 9/11, we were all inundated with Christian nationalists using their religion to justify illegal wars in the Middle East. Where is this imaginary uptick in atheism exactly? And MySpace? Even I'm old enough for that one, and I don't remember it being a hotbed of atheist activity. Isn't he gonna whine about Darwinism or something? No Christopher Hitchens hate? This is a pretty hot take.
With this ideology taking hold in pop culture for the first time, we had a new wave of celebrities. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Aaron Ra, and Matt Dillahunty were popular as actors in the field of atheism already, but social media increased their reach exponentially, and they gained numerous colleagues, or brothers in arms you could call them.
Oh, okay, he is going to whine about Hitchens and pals. This is a pretty flabbergasting angle for him to lead with. As we all know, Dan's entire online relevance is based on his extremely mild celebrity within the pseudoarcheology cult. An actual cult. Not just some asshat throwing the word cult around because science hurts his feelings. An actual cult. The cult exists because crap like Ancient Aliens took hold in popular culture, allowing pseudo-celebrities and wannabe cult leaders like Graham Hancock to spread their script of lies around the internet. This cult has ballooned out of control due to social media, Joe Rogan, and numerous other figures, or brothers in arms, elevating this grift over the past few years, and it's become quite lucrative given its popularity. So Dan is literally describing his own community of grifting losers and projecting that onto atheism, which is not really a community at all, and calling it an ideology, which is like pretending that realizing Santa Claus isn't real is itself a belief system. How tragic.
So we ended up with debunkers, and for some reason, most of them were either angry, insulting, or both.
Here's the thing, most debunkers actually are not insulting at all. I am, but my targets deserve it. You deserve nothing but insults, Dan, and virtually none of us are angry. Debunking frauds makes me very happy, in fact. You're just completely detached from reality and feel comfortable assigning random emotions to anyone you want as a way of deflecting from the substance of what they're saying. Your loser followers do it too. If I had $1 for every time some troll took a crap in my comment section, I calmly debunked them right to their face, and they came back just telling me how triggered I am, I'd be a fucking billionaire by now. You're angry is equivalent to, I'm too stupid to address what you said, so I'll fabricate emotions that will allow me to disengage from this interaction while pretending I won. But do continue.
But this did turn into a serious problem, as the proponents for Team Science act emotional and replace proper research with insults and derision. It set the tone for other atheists to act similarly.
Oh, you want the people who debunk the shit out of you to do proper research, huh? Is that what you did when your dumb fuck face couldn't even read a Fox News article and you pretended that actual scholars are wrong just because you mixed up two different locations that are common knowledge to anyone who knows anything about archaeology? And when exposed by me and several other people, you refused to issue any kind of apology or retraction because you're a grifting, intellectually bankrupt piece of shit who will say anything for clicks? Give me a break, Dan. You've been provided with countless arguments deeply rooted in empirical science that objectively demolish your entire clown show. You have never engaged with a single one in good faith. Ever. This is pathetic.
And this has led us to a place where the people that claim to represent logic and reason and evidence and, empiricism act emotional and angry and really aren't very scientific at all.
This is the funniest part about morons like Dan. If you ask someone who isn't stupid to tell you who represents empirical science, they would say scientists. Millions of working scientists who do research and publish in scientific journals. Since that's the correct answer, and apart from a few bad apples, scientists are overwhelmingly empirical. It's pretty hard to be a scientist if you aren't. Dan doesn't know any scientists. He doesn't know what they're like or what they do, and he's about to pretend that science communicators who expose his fraudulence must be nasty jerk faces, which means that scientists are also nasty jerk faces by extension. Doubly pathetic.
So hi, my name is Dan, and I don't have a good name for this channel yet. We are going to call it Dan's Really Cool Internet Thing on YouTube for now. But sit yourself down and we'll talk about atheism and how it's ruining science.
I don't think we'll be calling it that, Danny boy. We're just going to mock you for making the exact same dogshit content you always do and putting it on a different channel for no reason. Okay, dumbass, atheism is ruining science. Let's hear it.
Max Planck.
I mean, you just feel sorry for the guy after a certain point. If he wasn't a grifting piece of shit who is never doing anything but slandering legitimate scholars, you could give him a pass for the quirky grandpa routine, but in the context of who he actually is, it's just kind of skin-crawling. Max Planck what, moron?
Max Planck, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, once said, "A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it."
Awesome quote, dude. Okay, so science from old people is always wrong, and science from young people is always right. So you can point at any established science and proclaim it to be wrong because Max Planck said so, and he's a super genius. So there's no way for this hyperbolic quote to be anything but literally true in every instance. Did I get that right, Dan?
Now, Planck was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. He knew what opposition was in the scientific community, but this was a long time ago. So you can say that this opposition to change is not new.
What opposition was he talking about, Dan? Which idea, specifically? Who opposed it, specifically? What happened as a result, specifically? How old were the architects of the quantum revolution, specifically? Could you possibly be any more vague? We are all painfully aware that you know precisely fuck all about any area of physics or the history of science, so this wouldn't just be an empty argument from authority to tee up your pointless rhetoric, now would it?
But today, somebody offering a hypothesis that is equally counterintuitive to modern physicists' knowledge not only face an army of colleagues opposing them, they face outsiders who know little of the topic but speak authoritatively.
Dear God, what a 7-layer dip of irony. First of all, why the fuck are you saying this over footage of a march for science? These are scientists and science-minded people marching to defend science from the science-illiterate masses and the science-denying politicians they put into power. Look at this poster. Evolution, climate change, vaccines, GMOs, and space. The 5 things that brainwashed idiots pretend aren't real. Creationists, anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, these people are marching against those idiots. They're not protesting closed-mindedness within the scientific community. Why the fuck did you show this footage? What does it have to do with what you think you're saying? And then, for the love of Christ, Outsiders who know little of the topic but speak authoritatively, you are describing yourself and all of your cronies in your pseudo-archeology cult while asserting that rational people are in a cult. You somehow continue to surprise me with how bad you are at this.
And let's be fair, anything important is going to be something that is going to get pushback. All of the big discoveries, by definition, require accepting new information and rejection of old beliefs that were once considered knowledge. Once were considered quote-unquote proven science. So this is a difficult position emotionally for the people that have wrote papers, wrote books, taught their students that this is truth, because they have to admit that potentially their life's work was in error.
Got any examples, jackass? Let me guess. Heliocentrism and absolutely nothing else? A borderline pre-scientific model gets replaced at the dawn of the existence of telescopes. Therefore, any pseudoscience you enjoy is super awesome truth that is unfairly oppressed by the existing paradigm? Is that about right? If you weren't a science-illiterate moron, you would understand that paradigm shift of this magnitude is nearly non-existent. It is almost never the case that well-established science is proven wrong. Take the most famous paradigm shift in the history of science, the one you desperately pretend to understand, the quantum revolution. After the development of quantum physics and relativity, did Newton's laws cease to work and be useful? Nope. What about Maxwell's classical electrodynamics? Nope. These models and equations continue to work just fine, and they are still true in every sense of the word. We just came to understand the limitations of those models. Newton's laws continue to work incredibly well and make supremely accurate predictions for things that are larger than an atom and moving nowhere near the speed of light. That's why we still use those equations to send probes around the solar system. Funny how they always get where they're going, huh? Nobody's life's work is proven wrong. We simply expand our understanding such that models become more refined and apply to a wider range of phenomena. My other go-to example is the evolution of atomic theory. Dalton postulated little spheres unique to each element. When Thomson discovered the electron, was Dalton proven wrong? Nope. Each element does have its own unique atom. When Rutherford discovered the nucleus, was Thomson proven wrong? Nope. Electrons still exist. We just then knew their spatial distribution. When Bohr proposed his model with energy levels for the electron, was Rutherford proven wrong? Nope. We just then knew how electrons interact with photons. When Schrödinger proposed the quantum mechanical model of the electron, was Bohr proven wrong? Nope. Bohr's energy levels became the principal quantum number. Each previous scientist's contribution to our knowledge of the atomic world remained. Our understanding simply became more refined. That's how science works. Apart from centuries ago, when a particular field of science was literally brand new, and especially now in the 21st century, it is practically never the case that well-substantiated science is proven wrong. Models that work very well, making quantitative predictions that are routinely corroborated to many significant figures, are correct. We simply find limitations of their applications and either refine them or develop new models to complement the ones that exist. That's how science works. You have no idea how science works. You Googled a few names and quotes and decided that they fit the dumb story you want to tell. Nothing more.
But now it's harder for these people to do because they have public pressure to maintain the status quo from outside of their field, outside their institutions.
What the fuck are you talking about? What pressure is there on scientists to not do innovative science? What institution is telling scientists to just repeat experiments that have already been done for absolutely no reason? What power exists outside of these institutions that determines what a scientist gets to research? Apart from massive budget cuts that arrive due to administrations that are hostile towards science, who are only in power because of science-illiterate morons like you.
And let's be clear, it has never been easy for the scientific community to admit they have been wrong about something big. From the peopling of the Americas to South American influence on Easter Island to quantum entanglement to germs making us sick, science has had a very unscientific approach to handling these sorts of things.
Yes, his very first example of how scientists are stupid, closed-minded, unscientific buttheads is regurgitating Graham Hancock's dumb script about Clovis First, which we debunked to smithereens in the first video, some random shit about Easter Island that I refuse to look up. What's this about quantum entanglement? What is that, and what is the research surrounding it, and how is it interpreted by the scientific community? And what's this about germs? I'll give him some credit and assume he isn't a germ theory denier. So is he whining about how science didn't immediately embrace germ theory? What's the history there? Was it a model that had to be empirically substantiated, and once that was done beyond reasonable doubt, was it broadly accepted? This is all these morons can do. Take something that is well established today, like plate tectonics, and pretend that all those idiot scientists back in the day wouldn't accept it, but they were all wrong. Therefore, all the scientists in the world can be wrong about whatever I want, and they frequently are. No. New models have to be empirically substantiated, which takes time. For plate tectonics, there was some support for it, predictions were made, research was done to verify those predictions, and once magnetic striping on either side of mid-ocean ridges was firmly demonstrated, the entire geology community admitted that the model was consistent beyond reasonable doubt. That's how science works. Dan has no idea how science works, and he has zero knowledge of any of the context surrounding any of the phenomena he just referred to in passing.
Coming out with a new hypothesis that is completely flying in the face of the quote-unquote proven knowledge is like hanging a stake around your neck and running around with a bunch of lions. You're going to get attention, and probably not the kind you want.
Is it, Dan? Is doing science like running with lions? You've never done either, so whatever makes sense in your head, I guess. Even if you can identify a handful of older scientists who are resistant to innovation, they will never be representative of the scientific community as a whole. You should try befriending literally any scientist. That's a joke. Nobody in the world wants to be friends with you.
For instance, I've recently become aware of a guy named Dave Farina, aka Professor Dave Explains. He's a chemistry teacher by trade, and one of the guys who made his mark mocking flat earthers mercilessly years ago. Now that gets old, and people quit watching, so now he picks at all kinds of people who aren't perfectly in line with their fields.
No, I stopped debunking flat earthers because the social utility is extremely limited, dipshit. In fact, every time I go back and do anything related to flat earthers, it gets millions of views. So I indulge myself from time to time for nostalgia and a quick cash-in. I refrained from exclusively debunking flat earthers because I have this thing called integrity, and I'm interested in having the largest positive influence on society that I can. So I moved on to exposing frauds who spew medical misinformation that kills people, or Christian nationalists eroding the separation of church and state, or propaganda peddling pieces of shit who brainwash the masses with narratives friendly to the agenda of billionaire oligarchs. So yes, people who aren't in line with their fields, meaning disgusting lying frauds. Do go on.
Often I agree with the general position that Dave espouses. A lot of times I do feel like the person he's going after is talking pseudoscience. However, he also goes after people like Eric Weinstein or his brother Brett. Now, both have hypotheses that are not currently accepted by most of their colleagues, and both hypotheses are potentially groundbreaking.
Hey Dan, being a gullible moron who falls for the Weinstein brothers is not something you should be admitting publicly. Brett is a revolting charlatan who spread the most despicable medical misinformation all through the pandemic, which has been debunked 6 ways to Sunday, from fabricating vaccine deaths to pushing ivermectin and even HIV denial. Eric is billionaire oligarch Peter Thiel's lackey who gets paid to pretend to be a genius on podcasts and polarize the public against legitimate sources of information. They don't have hypotheses. They are not scientists. They are podcasters. I repeat, the Weinstein brothers are not scientists. They do not do science. They do not publish science. They lie on podcasts for a living. They are what dumb people think smart people sound like. You fell for it because you're stupid. I have a whole playlist devoted to ruining these turds, so maybe grow some nuts and watch that when you get a chance.
Now, I don't know enough about either of those fields to weigh in heavily, but I do know that there's a debate there. There is enough there that Both men are convincing some of their colleagues, not just outsiders.
Nope, these two shitheads are universally known to be worthless frauds by literally everybody except for the other grifter influencers in their cabal and their hapless victims. They don't have colleagues in the scientific community. Their colleagues are Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn. There is no debate, and in fact, they avoid debates like the plague because they know they're lying frauds. Each of them had an opportunity to debate me on Piers Morgan, and each of them declined. And when Eric grew some plums and faced Sean Carroll, the resulting debacle obliterated the tiny sliver of credibility he was desperately clinging to. They are frauds, and absolutely everybody educated knows it. You can whine about Sabina Hassenfelder to claim otherwise, like you did in this other crappy video, which is 30 minutes of you refusing to engage with anything I've said to expose Sabina as a propaganda peddling fraud with the same paymaster as Eric, but she doesn't count since she's a fraud. Sorry, kiddo.
These hypotheses are opposed by most and intriguing to a few. And the opposition is so strong with the flames of it fanned by people like Dave.
Yes, the Weinstein brothers and other frauds like them are despicable bad faith actors who poison society with lies and polarize the public against the scientific community. I expose and humiliate them to neutralize their influence as a public service. You're a brainwashed idiot whining about the fact that I do that, even though you can't list any of their hypotheses or defend them in any way whatsoever, since by your own admission, you're a science-illiterate moron who doesn't understand anything they say. Great job, jackass.
Just look at his views on YouTube. He gets tiny numbers, unless he's talking trash. His followers want blood, not accurate information. And Dave, being a successful YouTuber, gives them what they want.
Wow, isn't this pathetic? First up, tiny numbers unless I'm talking trash? No, you're just an idiot with no idea how academic content works. You're browsing my most recent uploads, you fucking dunce. Here's a reaction video making fun of a creationist jukebox. This is consumed by people for entertainment, which is equally desirable at any moment. Right next to it is a tutorial on Latin grammar. Who the fuck do you imagine is learning Latin grammar for fun, dumbass? Literally nobody. My tutorials, whether in foreign languages, mathematics, biological sciences, or any other topic, are viewed almost exclusively by students enrolled in those courses, specifically at the time that they are getting lectured on those learning objectives. Very few people are learning that specific thing the week I post the tutorial. Those videos accumulate views over time. Sort my content by most viewed, asshole. Yes, a few flat earth debunks at the top, but then what? Tutorials with millions and millions of views. Chemistry, biochemistry, anatomy and physiology, astronomy, physics. I have dozens of tutorials with over 1 million views and hundreds more with hundreds of thousands of views because students all over the world watch me every day. I consistently get about 250,000 views per day specifically because of my enormous back catalog of academic content. When do people watch this content? When they're studying that particular topic, numbnuts. I know that concept is foreign to you since you're an uneducated toolbox, but that's how college works. You get this thing called a syllabus, which outlines the topics you have to learn, and then students use my tutorials to help them pass their classes by supplementing their lectures. Next up, talking trash. No, sweetie, I expose grifting charlatans. They're the ones talking trash on the entire scientific community. I defend science from the trash talking. Do I insult the frauds while I do that? Absolutely, you Sasquatch taint. And it doesn't make me any less correct or my content any less valuable. So when you say I give them blood instead of accurate information, you're conveniently skipping the part where you explain how anything I say is wrong. Because you can't. Because you're a pointless muppet with zero ability to discuss literally any area of science. And finally, all you morons are only tattling on yourselves when you pull this card because you only got any traction in the first place by bad-mouthing archaeologists and lying while doing so. Slander is all you've got.
He did the same thing to me and Graham Hancock and Jimmy Corsetti. He lied about us, misrepresented us, and then when he's called out on it, he just doubles down. He didn't care to properly educate his audience on anything, the science or the people he was talking about.
Auditioning for a position in Trump's cabinet, eh, fuckface? Up is down, down is up, dogs are cats, cats are dogs. You three are lying pieces of shit who exclusively lie about science and slander real scientists. So when you're exposed, just claim that's what I'm doing and go hide under a pile of coats. Brilliant tactic. Do you think anyone's falling for it?
All he did was talk a bunch of crap and get some views. And he does this to a lot of different people, non-scientifically, not educationally, and he's not alone. He's one person of many.
All I did was talk a bunch of crap, huh? Hey, moron, are you still working your way through that Fox News article? It's okay, reading is hard sometimes. Anyway, yes, I do this to a lot of different people because there are countless idiot frauds like you poisoning the public with lies. In order to expose you, I have to explain science and educate the masses. So no, my debunks are supremely scientific and educational. There are thousands of people who have become passionate about fields like origin of life research exclusively from watching me debunk the shit out of frauds like James Tour. And some people are even newly fascinated by archaeology from watching me dunk on douchebags like you. And finally, sadly, I am nearly alone in this activity. People like me are outnumbered by loser frauds like you by at least an order of magnitude, maybe two. But the SciComm revolution is coming, so brace yourself.
He gets paid for these videos, unlike his actually informative videos, so he's incentivized to stoke these fires of vitriol while misinforming his audience.
I get paid by YouTube for all my content in exactly the same way, shit for brains. Do you have no idea how AdSense revenue works? Oh right, you don't, since your shitty channels don't get enough views to earn any AdSense revenue. And again, misinforming how, dildo? You don't get to just make that accusation and never give a single example.
And this whole thing ends up with an army of people that are going out of their way to stop new ideas from having a fair chance with many of their scientifically literate friends. And it also creates an environment of quote-unquote pro-science trolls that try to game the algorithm or spread more disinformation about Dave's targets.
I get it now. Dan is just butthurt that my content has shown so many people how pathetic his cult is, which has caused his echo chamber to evaporate. And now rational, educated people mock him everywhere he goes and everywhere he tries to post content. He can no longer just pretend he isn't stupid on a day-to-day basis. Maybe that's why he's hiding in this new channel that nobody knows about? Whoopsie.
Rather than fostering open dialogue, the climate is one of polarized fighting. Either you are pro-science or anti-science, and there is no room for new ideas in this mix. Well, not big ones anyway.
You don't want open dialogue, moron. You want to ignore all the facts that prove you wrong and continue profiting off of your pathetic cult. Yes, you are anti-science. Your followers are anti-science. You're all anti-intellectual losers stroking their boners to anti-establishment narratives that make you feel smart and special. You pretend they're new ideas because that's part of the self-delusion you engage in. They're actually just lies that contradict science. That's why you go on these diatribes pretending that established science has to be wrong because scientists are close-minded and blah, blah, blah. Also, you're whining about open dialogue. Didn't you go on Piers Morgan against all odds and run your dumb mouth freely? What are you complaining about?
It's sad, because what it has created is a situation that is clearly unscientific. And science that is supposed to learn from its mistakes still keeps putting the problem with humanity at the forefront because we're all humans here. It's almost like the scientists need somebody who's good with people to tell them how to act. They need handlers, kind of like Charlie Sheen.
It's like winning.
When was the last time you used?
Yes, somebody needs to tell those stupid scientists how to act. They're all like Charlie Sheen doing too many drugs. They'll never do real science while they're all being closed-minded dogmatic buttholes who never listen to loser frauds like Dan on YouTube. If they would just listen to Dan, who knows how scientists should do science better than scientists, then they'd really be winning. Breathtaking.
Anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching this. Thank you very much. If you click links down below, you'll find that I'll be in Sedona, Arizona, and May 1st through 3rd, talking live with some other people that Dave would call pseudoscientists. And there's links to support the channel. There's links to my other channel that's got more people that subscribed. And yeah, you can come check me out on Twitter or anywhere else you'd like to yell at me. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Nobody gives a shit, and yes, your cronies are all pseudoscience peddling frauds just like you. And that's the end. Isn't it funny? He made such a big stink up top about atheism, and then the bulk of the video was just whining about what a meanie pants jerkface I am, which has absolutely nothing to do with atheism. Where did I resort to atheism to expose the Weinstein brothers, or your loser cult? Where did I proudly proclaim there is no God when explaining how you're a fucking idiot who can't read a Fox News article? You know that plenty of God believers could do that too, right, dumbass? I guess that's what happens when you're just as scatterbrained and disorganized as you are dishonest and stupid. You can't manage to put together a 10-minute video with any kind of coherent theme. But then again, you don't need one. Your handful of brainwashed followers can't even follow the plot of a Scooby-Doo episode, so you can just throw out random buzzwords to trigger them, like atheist and dogma, no matter how much they don't fit together, and watch them clamor for more. And this is precisely why I've decided to hammer the pseudoarcheology cult into oblivion. Your intellectual bankruptcy is as palpable as that of flat earthers, and yet so much more pervasive. You take everything that's true of yourself and project it onto the figures who expose you. You're like Trump scoffing at everyone in the Epstein files while holding the title for biggest pedophile rapist alive. It's absolutely nauseating in its depravity. You're all useless, and I will ruin every last one of you with a huge smile on my face while I do it. But don't worry, Dan, you were already 6 feet deep. This was just a victory lap that I've so thoroughly earned. I'll be back for your loser friends before you know it. So that's it for Dan Richards, the cousin it of the internet. How long before his view counts truly drop to precisely 0? I'm optimistic we'll see that within the calendar year. In the meantime, I've got bigger fish to fry. I'll see you next time.